I'm gonna pick this angle, I think, Jim.
Yeah, right? Oh, Jesus.
Yeah, this is where I'm gonna sit.
Okay, I'm going to hide my muscles on today's podcast. I can't. I have too much light. But I'll pull up my shirt or something. With that too. We just spilled our first coffee of the day, but not all of it, hopefully. So tell me about something fun that happened to you this week or month.
Something fun that happened to me.
Or that happened that you were involved with.
I feel like there's something that should come to mind.
Tyson trains there. I train there sometimes, mostly when I have a competition, because the thing is, like, I'm not training for anything specific. I just like squatting and benching here.
Nice.
You know, it's got everything I need.
Yep.
But sometimes I really like to single arm cable row, and I just make a single arm. You know.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like dumbbell benching here because I don't have great dumbbells. You know, we've already experienced the potential face breaking. We avoided it, but you know, there's a lot of that potential that you can avert when you just have a whole rack of, I think especially St. Paul's dumbbells that go up to like 170 pounds or something crazy. Like, and they feel good. They're the best ones that I've used. So those things are nice, but then also if your like environment sucks, and you feel like you can't control it. I mean, I've been training at gyms for 8 years or 9, no, probably longer than that. I've just been powerlifting for around 8 years, and I still feel like this, unless I've been training at this specific gym and I know everybody to talk to, because it feels like they have a new person at the front desk like all the time. And I think I have somewhat of an aversion to authority in general. You know, like I just, I don't want to deal with this, but yeah, that's not the healthiest approach. And I think that is one of those things I talk about with the coaches that I'm kind of mentoring right now with the clients that they work with. There are other environmental circumstances that do make training challenging. And they always ask, like, well, how do I write this program for them? This lifter has this problem. Like, what should I do? And ultimately, I think we probably don't have enough information if it's not clear what we have to do.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, but you could still guess and see what happens. But I think, I don't know, you can't apply this to everyone, but I think if you dig deeper into those issues and like ask the lifter or try to gather from the lifter, what is the like primary limitation for like each session or each week or whatever, they'll probably have an answer that if it doesn't directly solve the problem, it gives you much better insights. And so that's why I wanted to have you on today. Well, just so we could talk about this, because you specifically have kind of, I don't know if you're aware of it, but it seems like you've brought awareness to all of the things that you think contribute to your satisfaction in the gym. And then it's also yielded like excellent results from both a bodybuilding perspective and a strength perspective. I mean, Jesus, dude, like I've genuinely, we filmed that towel training video, and I think you were like 50% smaller, you know?
Yeah, I probably put on like, I don't know. It's hard to have an accurate assessment of appreciable like lean body mass, but like 10 pounds of muscle in like,
I feel intimidated around you now, and I'm not really, but like in a way, like look at this guy, like, like what am I'm like, oh, hey guys, yeah. Anyway, I'm like referring clients to Tyson. I'm like, I don't know actually if I know what I'm doing. Look at this guy. Have you seen what he's doing? I seriously, like on the last 2 calls, I've been like, okay, so Tyson, Coach Tyson, guys follow Tyson at ZAO Strength, but he's been implementing this intuitive training thing, whether he knows it or not. And I, obviously, as like the business owner, focused entrepreneur mentality, toxicity, I'm like, how can we, develop a process and we can use it for other people? But still, I even if we can't like put specifics into things, I'm curious about that process.
Yeah.
So that's what today's podcast is about. Thanks for listening to that intro. Can you tell me what that's been like the last 6 months? Like, what has it been prior to the 10 pounds of muscle mass, and then how did you kind of come to where you are now?
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of it has come from like asking myself better questions. during training, which was, I think, inspired largely by you. Like, I feel like in our coaching calls, when you're talking about these processes of like, asking your clients of like how their focus is during a session and like bringing awareness to that. And like, when does it drop off? Like, I started implementing those things, I guess a while back now, but like in the last 6 months, I've paid better attention to like those signals in intrasession. Like, I'm really process oriented, as opposed to like outcome is like, I want to deadlift 600 pounds. The process of like picking a hinge variation or even like a muscle group that would contribute to my deadlift. Drink some water.
Yeah.
A latte is
the latte
coated.
the latte takes so much out of your like
your, but it was delicious saliva. And I feel adequately caffeinated. So
do you?
I feel
that's good. That was my second coffee and I'm like, I don't know. I gotta go take a nap. I was talking about I was referring to Zoloft before when I was saying my mental I just start taking drugs, and one of the things about Zoloft is it makes you kind of just not care about stuff that you otherwise would care about. But I mean, you do care. It's just you don't react as fast to your feelings, which I mean, that's at least my experience, and it's been nice because yeah, you just go and do your thing, but at the same time it's not nice because sometimes the reactivity is, I would say, the amount of times where my reactivity to stimuli and the speed at which I make a decision being a good thing is a lot less than slowing down.
Sure.
So like I don't wish to not be on Zoloft, but
yeah,
I didn't realize for how long in my life that reactivity was. I mean, it's definitely got me to where I am in a way, but it's, emotional responses aren't always negative, obviously, what we're kind of talking about right now. But if you're not combining the emotional input as well with the kind of like objective perspective, you're really going to miss. In a similar way, like if you're coaching, you're just looking at objective data. It's like, what does this even mean? What's this really telling me? Like, I can make up a story in my head. Like, I remember showing somebody some of my athletes training programs, and they were like looking at the training data that I provided for them, and they were like, well, look here, that when the volume was high, training performance improved, and so why don't you just increase everyone's volume? And it's like, well, because we obviously reacted to something that brought us to a lower volume level. I wasn't just like, all right, well, now it's time to do less. It's like, usually for me, I reduce the volume for athletes when stress either inside the gym is too much to recover from, and usually that's because external stressors are higher. So anyway, back to you on the process focused stuff.
And that's that's a really relevant part of the process stuff, is like training to match my conditions. Like, I happened to also be in a season where I had more energy and time to train and like motivation to train, which I think we'll dive into motivation too. But like even on a day-to-day basis, like I have a general plan to train most days, I would say. Like I'm not, some weeks it's like 4 days, some days it's probably close to 6 or 7, but some training days might just be like some cardio and then benching, and then I go home. Some training sessions are like 2 to 3 hours. I used to like be baffled, like, how does Seba train for so fucking long?
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm finishing an hour. I'm like, bro, what are you doing?
Seba, hurry up. You're still training right now, aren't you? Get done with it.
But I've gained a lot more empathy into that. But to like match like, my my sleep, my life stress, my nutrition, like energy levels. Most days going to the gym, I don't necessarily have a plan. I might have like a movement or two or like a muscle group that's high priority for me. Like mentality wise, it's like every day is weak point Wednesday, or like the word weak point, like focus point Friday. I don't know. Like every day, like I have like these priority muscle groups, these priority movements that I'm excited about training in the big picture. So I plan to train them almost every day. It's like a high frequency-ish approach. So like this style of intuitive training lends itself well when you have like high access to a training environment. Like if you're training once or twice a week or 3 times a week, like I feel like if there's a certain amount of work you want to get done in a training week, it might be less flexible for that. Like a part of the flexibility comes from like some days I'm just like, oh, my body's not really feeling it. I'm just going to rest.
Yeah.
And I just don't train that day, or I do like light movement stuff.
Do you go to the gym anyway?
Almost. Well, I also like, I train clients at almost every day. So like I'm there anyway. It's very easy to just train. Yeah, but I would say, and especially recently, I'm trying to now like integrate more cardiovascular work in. So like I plan to go every day, even if it just means like some light movement and some cardio, some increased heart rate.
That's something that's super interesting because obviously we live in Minnesota and it's like really cold. And currently it's like raining, but it's 35 degrees and there's snow on the ground. So like I'm not going outside, you know?
It's gross.
I'll hardly want to drive anywhere in these conditions. And it's been a lot of precipitation this winter.
Yep.
So like leaving the house is a luxury that I don't have to do, but at the same time, it reduces my own movement a lot. And in general, my lifestyle is a lot more sedentary than it was even like prior to my last competition. I don't know what the conditions were, but I just moved a lot more. I felt a lot more active. I was only 183 versus now I'm 198 as of this morning, which is my high for the year, I guess. But in the last few months, I think I was like 198 back in September when I was at went to Audie's competition. But yeah, it's just like one of those things where we don't have a lot of there's not a lot of influence outside of like our understanding of what we want to increase our overall work capacity. Like we have to be quite intentional about it in Minnesota.
Yes.
Or you decide you love like skiing or snowboarding or something, you know, which is nice. But again, it's another luxury of having time and money to do that.
Absolutely.
I haven't bought a treadmill, and my thought was like, if I have a treadmill at the house, it'll be really easy for me to like just walk. There's this idea of like self-determination theory that I know you and I talk a lot about. I talk about it like every single time I have a consultation with an athlete. Like,
yep, same. It's
just like, so when you understand it, I think it really opens up your mind to what is necessary, like the conditions that you need to satisfy so that a behavior sticks.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about the details in a second, but like, let me tell you, having a treadmill in your basement next to your fridge isn't exactly satisfying all of those conditions. It satisfies maybe one condition of the self-determination theory idea. And if you're alone and no one else is doing it with you, like, so since we've already shared, I don't want to do all the sciencey stuff. What is self-determination? Like what conditions are we talking about here?
So self-determination theory, as I understand it, the theory of motivation, there are 3 psychological prerequisites for motivation: and competency, autonomy, relatedness. Competency, do you feel like you know what you're doing, how to do it? Relatedness, do you feel like you know other people who are doing it? And autonomy exists on a spectrum. So high autonomy is doing something for the sake of the enjoyment of it, like going on a hike, you're doing it because you enjoy it. Moderate autonomy could be like it aligns with personal values, like I'm raising my heart rate for 130 beats per minute because I want to have a healthy heart. And then low autonomy is like boot camp, reward, punishment, not doing this out of your own choice. And so, you know, rather than I don't feel motivated to go to the gym, I don't feel motivated to train, I don't feel motivated to do cardio, it's like, am I lacking in competency, relatedness, autonomy?
Yeah. And I want to add to that, just because haven't stopped thinking about it since I learned about it like 4 years ago, I think. It's taken a while to get to the point where I'm like, yo, this is like maybe the most important thing to know, concept to understand if you're a coach. If you're just an athlete and you just want to follow a program, then you might not need to think about all of these things, because cool thing about motivation is that you might not always know why you're doing the thing you're doing, but if you understand motivation, you can start digging into like, well, why is it that I brush my teeth every morning? Like, why do I take a shower? You know, like why do I, like, there's no like biological thing that's like, you better fucking brush your teeth, you know, other than like your breath does start to stink, but you might not care about that but you do, because when the last time you had a bad breath, people laughed at you and they said you're stinky. They said you're stinky, ew. And then you were like, how do I make it so people don't say that to me? Oh, toothbrush, toothpaste, that's cool. I'm not gonna get an electric toothbrush and I'm not gonna floss, but I'll just do the bare minimum. And then you're like, okay, that's cool. But every time I go to the dentist, they tell me you're not doing good enough. Yeah, you good job brushing your teeth, but there's this other thing. It's called flossing. You got to do that. And you're like, yeah, I know. Like, flossing is cool, but I hate it. Why do you hate it? It's like it's an extra minute. You already brush your teeth for two. Oh, well, because maybe you don't have anyone else that does it. And it's like a socially accepted thing not to floss, right? And it's like a meme not to floss your teeth. For me specifically, Abby's like, we're flossing our teeth now. I'm like, okay. But I always forget. And she's like, Jim, you got to floss. I'm like, oh, okay, fine, I'll floss. But I'm not like, oh, why did you make me floss? It's like, I know that I've been needing to do this for years. Like, my health insurance is no longer like peaked out. I don't have my mom's health insurance anymore. So, it's more of a motivator. This is still like an extrinsic motivator, by the way. I don't like, I'm not like, well, I am competent at flossing. I do relate to my girlfriend about flossing, and it is more or less my choice. But if I didn't have to ever take care of my body, and there were no consequences, I wouldn't. I wouldn't. I mean, I probably would. But anyway, the point is, it's kind of autonomous. But the big thing is, all these are perceptions of competency, perceptions of autonomy, perceptions of relatedness. Because, for example, a lot of psychological, like, I guess, disorders, though I feel like that's got a weird stigma, that word disorder, but like anxiety or depression, or those are the two ones I will say, because I don't want to speak too far out of my scope. But a lot of them deal with the fact that how you're perceiving the world isn't really in alignment with what the world is actually telling you, or the values that you have on the input that you're getting from the world are very, very sensitive. And as a result, it's making it difficult to function in society. So if your perception of relatedness is low, but all of the indicators are telling you that, like, people love having you in the gym, like every time you do talk to people, they're smiling at you and they're making jokes, and you go home and you're like, they all hate me. Well, you don't have no indication that that's true, but for some reason the perception is shifted.
Yeah.
And that is more about like childhood development, like trauma and all these things. But that's how we can think about training in the same way. It's like, if all of the data is telling you that, like, not training that often is actually really good for you, or training your legs once a week is really healthy for you, but like all the people that are telling you to, train more, maybe not people at the gym, but like people you don't even know, and for some reason you value their input more, you might be making the wrong decisions. But which is why I think this is really important. One more thing about the motivation is, like, as you get away from these self-determined behaviors, you have more and more extrinsically determined behaviors, or regulated behaviors, as they say in the literature. On the far end is an amotivated behavior, which is kind of what Tyson was referring to with boot camp. But I would even say, like, a purely amotivated behavior is one that you're forced to do. You have lack of control. You have no identity relationship around it. And I guess every time I think about it, it's like that's kind of like slavery. We won't get into the amotivated behaviors, because I hope no one here has a client that is amotivated but training.
Yeah.
They might be lacking motivation, but it's not. It's a scale. So where is it coming from? And then why do they feel that their motivation is lacking? And I think if you look at self-determined behaviors, the reason why they're so useful is because they lead to the most desirable long-term behavioral changes compared to a behavior that is less self-determined. So back to the self-determination in terms of how you've been approaching it. How do you assess that for yourself? Like, how do you know about these levels of competency or feelings of relatedness? Like, have you done anything different to magnify each of those things?
I suppose so. I feel like a lot of why my training is going well is like a incremental improvement in all the different little variables that I was already doing fairly well in. I feel like I think of like James Clear Atomic Habits, of like the 1% improvement the 1% improvement or incremental improvement in all the different areas. So like even something as simple as like relatedness, like I've been training at Franklin Loves for 6 years, so I like know most of the people there, but I've been extra intentional about kind of introducing myself to more people, like trying to, because I tend to be very like reserved, very like tunnel visiony, like I'm just there to like lift, and I to some degree that's good. Like but I think I skewed heavily towards like so quiet that it was hard to talk to,
Yeah.
which is fine. But I have more relatedness. Like I do know more people than I did 6 months ago.
And you know more people that are like engaging in the similar behavior as you.
Yeah.
That's the important thing.
Yes. Yeah, that's an important clarification.
But you could also connect with a bunch of people on the cardio machines, right?
Yeah.
And if you want to do cardio, that's really nice. But if you're doing cardio and everyone's lifting weights, it's hard because the relatedness is relative to the behavior.
Yep. Yeah. I know more people who are pursuing the strength and aesthetic goals that I'm aspiring or like enjoy pursuing. And then competency wise, I feel like there's like a lot of little elements that I could touch on or go into, but I feel like the biggest thing for me was that there's like this. I remember hearing you talk about simplifying like a training, program. Like you can have, 6, 9 movements in a training day. But I really started like taking like one movement at a time, to the degree where like I might hope or try to plan to do more than one movement, but I would do like one session of like weighted pull-ups, and it took me like an hour. And I built up to that. It's not like I started there, but like I rested long periods of time. I had like a lot of warm-up sets. I like had a shit ton of back off sets, but like really learning how to like to achieve a really potent stimulus from an exercise, like so slowing down and yeah, rather than doing like 6 pull variations for a pull day, it's like I got a lot out of like one pull-up movement. So competency wise, like the process of warming up, achieving a top performance in a movement, and then like assessing of like how much more stimulus do I need, like how much is enough. Like competency wise, I feel like I've gotten really good at that.
That's the question that one of my clients had specifically, is like, okay, we're doing intuitive training now. I know all the exercises and all the rep ranges, but how do I know how many like sets to do? How do I know if I'm doing enough?
Yeah, that is the question. That is the question I ask myself every day. I mean, I think I like pull-ups as an example because it's one that I've improved and continue to improve. So like as I'm warming up and making like load selections to achieve a top performance, and I achieve a top performance of like a top set that's hard, can't really do much more weight or RPE wise. I try to like check in with my body, and it's usually like a minute or two rest too. Like immediately after the set, you're going to be tired, but like I'm asking myself questions like, does this muscle have more to give? Like, does it need more? And I try to like feel that out, but ultimately I'm like using like vague sensations to try to just make a decision. And the only way I know it was enough is like next pull-up session, assuming I have like adequate recovery time, I have like a performance that was verifies that. So it's hard. It is hard to know how much is enough. But I also I feel like for me, it's like the mental focus factor too. Like I could keep doing more sets of pull-ups, but like, am I like mentally engaged? And like I found like doing the CIBA rows, the one arm cable rows, after my pull-up session was like a way for me to like be more interested in it and accumulate more work rather than just like keep doing more pull-ups. But I also, loaded with a deep stretch. It's a great movement, but so yeah, that's how finding out how much is enough is the hard part.
Well, I also want to add, like, for those who don't know, how much progress on the pull-up have you made in the last, like, what, 6 months since you've been doing this, or has it been like a year?
Yeah. 6 months wise, I feel like I've added, because I recently did my body weight plus 130, which is almost 3 plates. 6 months ago, I feel like I was at about my body weight plus 90, maybe 100. And then a year ago, I was probably at like my body weight plus 35 or 50. So, yep, that's
about 100 pounds.
About 100 pounds on my weighted pull up. So
I don't know if y'all know, but that shit ain't easy, because I've been doing like body weight for like 7 years. But I also am not very intentional about my pull up either.
I had been too. Like my baseline was like I could probably bust out a set of 8 pull ups body weight, and like with a weighted pull up, you know, probably 20 to 30 pounds for a set of 3 to 5.
Yeah.
Like I would say I achieved that and maintained that for like a decade.
Yeah. So it's not like you're like untrained to pull ups though. That's the thing that's really cool. Right. And it's not like you're untrained to any of these lifts either. Obviously we recently had your birthday party session where like your goal was to deadlift 600. Granted, you're using straps in a deadlift bar.
Yeah.
I would argue that if you're not used to pulling on a deadlift bar, it doesn't help. It can help, and with straps it probably definitely helps. But for me, being so used to the technique that I use for a straight bar or stiff bar, I hated it. Like, I was like, okay, I pulled 500 myself, but felt like shit. Like I hate the force curve on a deadlift bar.
Yeah,
like I hate where you feel the tension, and then what happens at lockout. I just always feel like, am I locked out? Like it's still moving, you know, like what the fuck?
Yeah.
Anyway, you pulled 635,
right?
Which was what, a 35 pound all time, or
be 50
pound all time PR after 4 years of recurring chronic back pain.
Yep.
So that's where this is super interesting, because I think every time, I don't know if you guys are listening, ever followed was it Barthel Fitness? You know Barthel? He's a guy from Minnesota that had a YouTube channel, and I remember watching a video. He was like a personal trainer. He's talking about how, I mean, it's just some guy, right? But he's like, intuitive training is dumb, because like if you have no plan, then how are you gonna, like, you know, actually make any progress? Like you just show up to the gym and just do things that you like. How would you make gains that way?
Yeah.
You gotta do stuff you don't like so you get stronger. Which is obviously a common thought, right? Like
Absolutely.
you gotta work on the thing you don't like doing. And I think it's the wrong way to think about it. Like what I always ask my clients is like, or try to think about for my clients is, what is the limiter that we should work on? Not like, what are you bad at?
Yeah.
That's a different thing.
That's a good framing.
Because you could be bad at pull-ups, but you don't care about pull-ups. You gotta do pull-ups. So you could be bad at unilateral split squats, but are unilateral split squats and putting intention and effort and energy into split squats going to put us in a better position to kind of reach the goals? And we might not have the answer, but if the lifter doesn't have that sensation of autonomy with our just collective decision, which I like to, for making any changes, I like to make it collective. If we're making addition or subtraction to what we've already been doing, I just kind of go ahead and do it. No one's going to bat an eye. They're like, oh, cool, I don't have as many sets to do today, right? But when it comes to adding something new and telling a lifter, like, this is something I want you to put in your program, I want them to care about it.
Yeah.
And I want them to enjoy it at the same time, at least some part of it. It might not be the movement itself is super enjoyable, but there's something else related to the movement that they like. But if there's none of that, and there's no competency, and there's no one else in the gym doing it, I mean, you don't need everyone to be doing the shit that you're doing. That's not what relatedness is. It's just that when you're doing engaging in a behavior, you have support.
Yep.
So that could be other people doing it with you, but it also could be like, yo, that's tight, Tyson. Good job fucking adding 100 pounds to your pull-up. Like, that's relatedness. Like when you do it, you feel connected to the people you care about, or the people that are engaging in a similar behavior. So when you're trying to solve these problems, it's like sometimes you're just looking at the wrong stuff. Like, you're not answering enough questions about the intra-session day. And that's the one thing that I wish I could do more of with lifters. Like, ultimately, it's why I'm really excited to hear more. It's like, how could I get a lifter to show up to the gym and do something that is good for them for the right amount of times? You know, the right amount of stuff that's good for them, and then move on with this exercise, the set of the day. You know, like, I don't know. What do you think would be necessary for that?
Yeah, that is a good question.
Can you guys just take a look at his biceps real quick? Because I think they've also grown. Like, bro, I would never thought of Tyson as like a bodybuilder before like the last few weeks. I just thought of Tyson as someone that watches YouTube videos and like lifts weights, and we're both like, I feel the same way about myself. Like, I don't think, oh, I'm a bodybuilder or even really a powerlifter. Like, I like doing power lifts, but I'm not like, oh man, I don't feel that strong. Like, I rarely do, even when I am strong, which is a nice thought sometimes. But when you realize you're not strong, or you realize you're not big, and you want to be big and you want to be strong, we were talking about this upstairs. That's when you start making decisions that might not be actually as good for you.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I have a meet coming up in 9. We both do. Tyson and I are both competing, actually. I've had absolutely no momentum the last few months. Like, some momentum about 2 months ago, really good momentum. Finally, kind of working on some things that I hadn't been. And then I got sick for a week, and then I recovered for a day, and then I got COVID for another week. And then I was like, okay, so I've been out of the gym for 15 days, like literally just sitting on my couch. Now I've got to meet 10 weeks out. Like, that sounds like a lot sometimes, but when it comes to like knowing how much momentum is kind of necessary for growth, especially in your previous training, and then like wondering if you can get that back, or like, I don't know, I got really excited. I was like, I'm going to do 4 times a week training, which is an additional day from what I'm used to. But I thought, if I can go to the gym more often, I'll make better decisions, because I'm not, I'm moving more, and that's something I know I need to do, which is true. However, I also decided to like add a bunch of squatting volume that I have been used to that much since 6 years ago, maybe. But I was excited about it. So I'm like, well, if I'm excited, I'll probably be fine. But there's also a reality that like my body still has like these physiological, things going on inside. My relationship with my recovery and like how I think about the training, et cetera, is all impacting that. So I had to make that decision like yesterday, like, all right, you're going to have a different training week this week than you initially planned, because 3 days of squatting is leading me to increased sensitivity in my hip, which is making me feel pain. And that impacts my motivation. That impacts my levels of competency, somewhat impacts my autonomy. Cause like, as a coach coaching myself, I'm like, why did I do that? I don't want to do this. This isn't what I want to do anymore. So like, you start noticing that, and you're like, either continue doing it despite not wanting to, and then that's that lack of autonomy, or you make a change because of these other inputs that you're noticing or should be listened to. So I still don't know what to do necessarily. I just know that what I was doing is too much.
Yeah.
And so maybe that's kind of like part of the process, is like, just do stuff until you might fuck up sometimes. And kind of, to be fair, you've had a lot of training experience too.
Yeah.
So it's not like you're just pulling all of this out of your butt. Like, you kind of have an idea, but are you ever really certain that you're getting the most out of every session? Like, are you ever like, oh, I did the most. That's it. That's definitely it.
Yeah, no, not much certainty. That's not having to circle back to your question before. And I think it relates to what you just said, like, not having a competition in mind was really helpful. I think for me, I've noticed with the competition kind of looming in the background, it has kind of obviously it influenced my training decisions, but even just kind of the way that I've, there's just the sense of urgency that wasn't there before. And so to me, that I find it helpful to not have that pressure of like, to be good at these lifts on this day. It opened the door to like really exploring movements that I hadn't trained as much, or like, I feel like there was like untapped potential in other muscle groups, other movements, that by like going and finding out what's there, when I circled back to like main lifts, there was just so much more space for improvement.
Yeah.
Like deadlifting, honestly, all 3 lifts I kind of like put on the back burner. Like I probably barbell benched like once every other week. I probably barbell squatted once every other week. It was like a half frequency on my barbell movements. And I was certainly training those movements with dumbbells or machines or like different ways of training them. But I really put those on the back burner, because like I feel like I had spent many years really focusing on being good at those and being like really outcome oriented on those lifts, that like I kind of like I didn't fall out of love with training. Like it was still an important part of my life, but like I lost like this like hunger or like drive or like just enjoyment. I call it enjoyment of training. And so like, yeah, I think that I forgot what your original question was. It was you like as it relates to a lifter finding out how much is enough.
Yeah, but that's the thing, is that you were able to explore in this completely other direction. You detached yourself from the outcome almost entirely, at least the outcome of strength, and focused, it sounds like, a lot on what felt good for the day purely. I mean, that's what
Mhm.
you were doing for a
Yeah.
long time,
Yes.
maybe with less frequency, but
Mhm.
I think because you had less constraints in a way, like I
Mhm.
have to do a squat variation, I have to do a barbell squat variation. Like now you can say I want to train my legs.
Mhm.
What leg movement do I want to do?
Yeah.
And I think power lifters are very afraid to do that. I was listening to a podcast this morning with Eric Helms and Mike, and he said something very similar. Like one of the things that which is cool that he brought it up. I'm like, I have a podcast with Tyson today about this. What the hell? He said, one of the most underrated variables is my that sensation that like you get when you first started powerlifting, like when you first or just training in general, like that first few months of your first training plan where you started to feel competent finally. Maybe you've hit like one milestone that you just didn't think was there. Now you're like, what other milestone's going to hit? I'm going to fucking keep going. And he said that by changing his sport and objective
Mm.
from bodybuilding to weightlifting and then to powerlifting and now back to bodybuilding again, it's like he's been able to kind of modify his training variables in a way that keep him excited and hungry, like kind of you're mentioning. But at the same time, it's like you're rapidly improving. So the competency factor another thing about competency is it's not just absolute competency; it's also relative competency, like your perception of competency in relation to other people that you care about, and how do you feel about that as an identity, and then also it's your competence, is your projected competency or your belief that the future competency will improve.
Mm.
So, are you able to improve in this skill? It's not like explicitly written out when you read about self determination theory, but I mean, I think it makes a lot of sense because if you don't think you're going to get better at something, then why would you want to do it? You have to believe that you're able to do more.
Yeah.
Which also is why pain is so frustrating because it does impact that like perception of competency so much.
Absolutely.
Um, so anyway, this idea that like his as a scientist, he does all the studies that talk about like training volume and
Mhm.
what is the best way to build your biceps or whatever.
Mhm.
Eric, if you're listening to this, I don't know if that's actually what a study that you've done, but the point is, it's surprising, I suppose, that someone that does spend so much time in research is also like, well, if I enjoy training, I respond better to it.
Mhm.
It's like, yeah, fucking obviously, but
Uh,
people seem to ignore that. I think a lot of it is from this kind of toxic perspective that you should do what's on your program because you're supposed to.
right.
Supposed to? Who's what? Like from what
Uh,
perspective
yeah.
supposed to?
Yeah.
And it's also something I try to discourage from my athletes. Like I want them to tell me like, yo, this sucks. I don't
Mhm.
like it. It's too much,
Yes.
too little.
Yes.
This exercise needs to be changed.
Yep.
And as a coach, it's really easy for me to just do that myself because I'm coaching myself. So I'm my own coach. But there is a benefit to coaching too, outside of the programming, is that you can be someone that can get that information out of your athlete
Mhm.
without, them maybe knowing what you're trying to do and
Mhm.
still allow for better outcomes in their training.
Yep.
Um, so, and yeah, obviously I want Tyson to talk about how he's doing it with his own, but just remember, as we're talking about these things, it's not that there's no utility in having a coach anymore, but more so like if you do have a coach, how can you get more out of your training by communicating better, by bringing awareness to what you're doing in the gym and how it makes you feel versus like, I'm just doing this because my coach said, like, trust me, your coach isn't all knowing, like you can hide behind that perception for a
Yeah,
while
absolutely.
and just leverage the fact that you're excited about the program that your coach is giving you,
Mhm.
but eventually it's not going to excite you anymore. And I see athletes do one of two things. They either like stop training or they switch coaches. They never just say, "Hey man, maybe my input could be more utilized, and we can make a completely custom program based on my experience. So since I'm self-coached,
yes,
I want to know more.
yes,
What else are so one of the conditions that I think that is necessary as a big part of this is that you have spent years developing your relationship with your body, and
yeah,
your mind, obviously.
yeah.
Talk to me about that. Like, what's that been like? What do you do on a daily basis? What have you changed? Because you talked about how one of the big things you change is asking yourself more questions on the day. What happens when you have an answer? Like, what are some of the answers that you get when you ask them? Like, I'm feeling like shit. You know what I mean? Like, what do you do then?
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Yeah. So I guess an easy example would be like Sunday morning, I had poor sleep. I had like some alcohol the night before, so like my sleep was disrupted from that on top of like getting up early for a session. And like my body felt like cold. Like it felt like so what I ended up doing was like a long session of cardio first. And so basically if I feel like shit, I'll still move and I'll still like give my body a chance to ramp up, because I've definitely had sessions where I had very low expectations based on initial impressions. But by the time, like, once I get my body temperature up, I get enough like warm up sets, especially on the first movement. Like, until you've ramped up. And an analogy that I sometimes use with clients is like you walk into an empty house and all the lights are off. It's like you walking into the gym and you start like going like floor by floor, room by room, turning on light switches, and the goal is to have them all on, like your nervous system to be fully online by that top set of your first movement. So like I'll still go through the process and still be checking in as I'm going and be willing to like move on or even bail and go home. And so like a willingness to pack it up, like it is, I think, good. So yeah, that's kind of my process. Like I start with internal body temperature. I start with the first, and as I'm doing the internal body temperature portion, whether it be like walk on an incline or a stair climb or something, I also am kind of like feeling out of like what feels trained, what feels like it's sore or tired, or like what is available to train today, especially with like a high frequency approach. I think um I'm willing to like not train that muscle group today if it's not feeling it.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's obviously like something that you have to be intentional about practicing, that's one of the strategies that but I've heard when I do like sleep meditation, they do like a scanning, like a body scanning,
Yeah. Yes.
and, it's weird how effective it is, because you close your eyes. If you've never done this, let's do this with me right now. Okay. Close your eyes and just focus on your breath for like 5 breaths, or usually 10 breaths. So let's just do kind of 10 breaths, right? So you go, and as you breathe, start thinking about how the top of your head feels. Is there any tension in your eyebrows, in your forehead? Is there any tension in your face? Do you have the ability to relax that on the exhale? Usually you'll notice like, oh, actually I can release and relax my eyes. It's a weird thing to relax, but you actually can release that tension that might kind of feel like a smile in your eyes. And then you realize, oh, my jaw actually is a little tense too. I can relax my jaw. I'm not going to do that while I'm talking, but and then you notice you scan down towards your neck and you realize, is there any tension in your neck? And I always remember listening to this in these sleep meditations and thinking like, there's no tension in my neck. How would you know that? There's no way. Then you're like, wait, I can actually kind of stretch my neck muscles. Usually it's kind of related to the jaw. And then you scan down your chest. Is your chest feeling tight? One of the ways to relax your chest is to open up your shoulders a little bit and then pull them down and see if you can get the flexion, tension in the muscles away from the chest. You do that and continue throughout the body. And if you've never done this before, it's going to feel weird, but the more you do it, you start realizing that the thoughts that you have are kind of distractions from, remember, you have a body here and there's something to learn from it. And the thoughts that we have unrelated to this moment about scanning your body and scanning the feelings that you're having is irrelevant, because our objective right now is to feel the body, which, if you're doing cardio, yes, we want the cardio to help elevate our heart rate, but we also should be breathing in a way that makes us connect with the body. And the more we do this, the more we gain an awareness for what does our body feel like when we don't attach to the thoughts related to our day or related to the stressors or related to the future or the past. Because if we can't get to this point, then we can't make decisions that are accurate on the moment. And if you want, you can open your eyes now.
That was nice.
But right, if you've done it, if you did that with me, appreciate you. If you didn't, because you're listening to what I was saying, try it out tonight. Try it out as part of your day. It's I know you do this at least partly when you're putting yourself into 20-degree water in the river. Again, I don't do that, but it is something I feel like is probably really useful, because we're talking right now a lot about what we're doing in the gym. And I guess just to kind of speed things along, this is finding out what's right is going to be a process, because you could be wrong and you need to be okay with doing too much and knowing then what happens next. But I think a lot of the things that we do outside of the gym can kind of increase our tolerance to what is too much and what is too little. I think I referenced earlier that I used to be a lot more active, but when COVID started, I lived with my parents. It's Minnesota. I used to travel the world, which is really cool and warm, usually a lot warmer than here. So I didn't really have to think about adding cardio into my day or movement. It was just part of my day. But now that I do have to think about movement, it's kind of like annoying, because I just wish that part of my lifestyle was more conducive to having I just wish it was more active, I guess. But it's not. And the conditions kind of do require me to think a bit more about how can I maximize my habits, I guess. Create habits that aren't otherwise provided for me through my environment. So Tyson, I think you might be the best for this. What have you been doing outside of the gym? I obviously mentioned the river, bring that up too, but what have you been doing outside of the gym to kind of bring your body back to baseline and mind back to baseline?
Yeah. The thing that stands out to me a lot is my, what I refer to as my TAO practice, or self-determined resistance. And that was I spent March 2020 to March 21 training only with a towel or two towels. And so it was, a series of isometric contractions, and then contractions where you're resisting or assisting parts of your body with other parts of your body. Like a simple example would be like your bicep versus your tricep. But what I gained from that time was this appreciation for creating tension and sharing that with the whole body, or choosing where tension goes, or attention being literally the mechanical attention applied to the towel, towel tension. And I feel like I gained a lot more awareness of, and almost out of necessity, because at that point I was still managing some persistent low back pain, which started in early 2019. And so there were days where an isometric deadlift so prior to that year, deadlifting and squatting kept resensitizing the area. It was an intensity threshold of 275 for a set of 3 to 5. And every time I went past that, it just kept I would feel it for days afterwards. It didn't quite get to the point where it was impacting my ability to do my job, but a 45-pound plate did also then resensitize it. It was very touchy. So it was nice because it I by not knowing how much tension was on the towel, I didn't like have a number that I was attached to that I have to produce this much force today. It was purely on feel of like how much force feels good, how much force for how much time is like time under tension. Feels like a nourishing amount or like an amount that like adds to the capacity of that area.
Yeah.
And so with that practice, I apply that to all the areas of my body. But like now taking that to the gym, I feel like I have a lot of body awareness of like how much does this muscle have to give? Like how close to stimulated is it or overstimulated? Like I can tell when I've done enough sets, like I kind of just know the feeling at this point. And there are subtleties to it, but like I don't know, like you know when you have to take a poop. Like you can feel sensate, like there's like I know. And so like I definitely gained a lot of sensitivity to how much is enough during that time. And then I think I've like took lessons and applied it to training of like, yeah, body awareness and sensitivity.
I think it's probably going to be a shock to a lot of, maybe not people listening to our podcast, but if you were to like share this to someone that's maybe a little bit more dogmatic about their training, I think it'd be really challenging to convince them that you could listen to internal body signals to tell you how much is too much. But like at the same time, like every single lifter uses, like pretty much every single lifter now uses RPE in their training, which is internal load to, a sensation of internal load to justify the end of your rep or your set, I guess, right?
Yeah.
And then I think the better way to understand it, and I always say this when I started using RPE myself, because I just get injured often. I have injurious experiences, or more than I'd say a lot of people. Pain is a good way to, once pain is introduced to the equation, bar speed, for example, is no longer the indicator that the RPE is reached for the day, because it's not an idealistic scale. It's a scale that should be rooted in reality. So if pain is the limiter, or if grip is the limiter, or if bracing is the limiter, that is the limiter that will cause you to fail. So bar speed might simply be fast, even right before your grip fails, or right before you fall forward on your chest because you didn't brace sufficiently, or whatever. So similarly, when it comes to assessing, the appropriate training stress, there are these limiters that we are aware of that no one else could see or observe, that we have to get really good at analyzing and assessing. And it does sometimes take 6-7 years of training, but it will be much quicker, I think, just kind of hearing you and remembering my own training, because I get a lot more nervous about what my training should be when it's not going well. Or when I haven't been training for that while because I've been sick. And then I'm like, well, what should I do now that I'm this new person, but I always remember these internal things. And I'm like, well, it's pretty obvious I've done too much, or it's pretty obvious I haven't done enough, but my approach with clients is like, let's just start with the minimum and find out what that threshold is. Like, what is the least we could get away with and still see positive adaptations, whether that's muscle growth or strength adaptations that we're aiming for. And surprisingly, it's pretty low.
Yep.
Yeah. Like, and if you think about the accumulation of training stress as well, you're not just training in 1 week and then you're done.
Yeah.
So if we know that there is a minimum effective threshold that we can achieve that's pretty low, depending on who you're listening to, I think Chris Beardsley talks about like even like 1 or 2 hard sets can elicit a good chunk of muscle growth. Why start at 6 when you can start at 2 and get your fucking workout done?
Yep.
Yes, we all love the feeling, the burning of like 7 sets of 10. That's a nice pump. But when you understand what's actually happening, a lot of that is, especially after like set 4 or 5, is like muscle damage,
right?
Which isn't conducive to positive adaptations. It's literally the opposite.
Yeah.
And I think as we learn more about mechanical tension specifically, you realize like, why would it be useful to damage the muscle? Oh, well, it's going to cause these, mechanisms that elicit growth. But it's like, yeah, but how much time is being spent to recovering the muscle that was damaged, and how much is it spent on adding muscle to what you had previously. And if you think about accumulation of mechanical tension, you're training 52 weeks out of the year. If every time you train, you're just doing the minimum, that's going to, like that 0.1% idea that you've talked, or 1.1% idea.
Mhm.
Yeah, shit, that's 52 weeks of 1.52 or whatever. Yeah. 50% better. I don't know, math.
Yeah. Yeah, that resonates so strongly. Like I feel like most of my training lasts 6 months. Like when I do a movement, most of it's like 1 or 2 hard sets. And like it's that from that establishing the minimum, creating momentum and riding it, and not like swapping the like not like losing the momentum. It's like you're like catching a wave and riding it. Like if you're too greedy or like too passive, or like I guess a life circumstance, but like like
I like the wave though, because if you're surfing, you gotta go to catch the wave.
Yeah.
Right.
And so like yeah, I feel like there were a lot of moments where this whole time I've been feeling like I'm riding a wave, where it's like I can recognize I'm kind of balancing, and I'm doing it so far skillfully, but like I could go too much or too little. But it's so, I feel like if I were to just jump in the training I'm doing now a year ago, it would be inappropriate to like where I was a year ago. It's because I like started with 1 or 2 hard sets in these movements I was enjoying, and then using kind of the intuitive process to flush out of like, can I do more? Does this have more to give? Does it need more? Led to maybe me doing more than 1 or 2 hard sets in some movements. But like even now, I've been doing one set of deadlifts, one top set of like 10 to 12 reps, like once a week or once every other week, and adding like 30 to 40 pounds each session.
Yeah.
And it just keeps going up.
Yeah, that's really cool. Mostly because like, again, I have a competition coming up, and I'm just like kind of reverting back to like kind of ideology instead of reality as a way to build a training program. And I think a lot of this just comes back to fighting like what you know to be true and what you wish were true or something like that. Like, well, I know that I responded well to basically nothing, but what if I did more? Could I get to my goal faster? And I don't know. Every time I do that, it doesn't seem to go that way.
Yeah.
Is that the same for you? Like, I mean, obviously, if you've understood and created a baseline and added one set, that's more. But for me, one more is like, I'm going to squat 3 times this week instead of 1. And it's like, that's a huge jump, bro. Like, in terms of weekly stress, again, it's all cumulative. Like, I can't do that every week.
Right.
Because now I need a whole week to recover from just that 1 week of three squat sessions. Like, I've resensitized my hip. I hadn't had any hip bother me for weeks. And then I obviously got COVID, and I jumped into something more. But man, it's like hearing you talk about this, I'm like, fuck, I kind of like wish I wasn't competing. But at the same time, it's like, now that I know I'm competing, I just have to kind of still do it. Still do what's necessary for the day. In a sense, it's kind of like why I wanted to train more often, because I'm like, well, if I'm in the gym more often, maybe I'll have more opportunities to just adjust. But that's, again, I have to listen to this current stimulus, not attach it to it forever, but because I have trained multiple squats a week. I think my best ever block, I had a 300 squat at the end and a comp squat in the beginning, so Monday and Friday, and then bench only on a Wednesday. That's kind of been my block for a while, which resulted in all-time PRs. Last February was the last time I had 3 lift PRs in all 3. Benched. Well, I matched my meet PR, but I benched like 155 kilos. I squatted 220, which is an all-time lifetime PR. And then deadlifted 245, which is also not a lifetime PR, but it was a stiff bar PR, which I was happy about. And now I'm like, I got to get back there. I'm heavier. I'm not as strong. How do I get there faster? Well, I was doing this this type of training back then, but at the same time, I was on different medication. It get me a lot of energy. I kind of was running a lot more on like cortisol and shit. So like, I needed a little bit more stimulus to like calm down.
Yeah.
And if I didn't train, I was just kind of like a basket case, I guess. Is that a bad phrase?
I don't know.
I don't know either. Sorry, guys. Anyway, now I'm on Zoloft, and my conditions and how I relate to the world is a lot different. Like it's just different, and I have to be honest with myself about that. And potentially I'm thinking about lowering the dose a little bit, just seeing if it gives me a bit more energy, because sleep is the variable that I think is for myself the most conducive to either a positive or a negative training day. I mean, it's the biggest, it's not the only, but it's a huge one. And
Yeah,
you know,
I feel that.
if I don't sleep well, I just am kind of like, I have to go to the gym thinking, oh, well, it's my one squat day this week, so what, fuck, if it doesn't go well, I'm gonna be so annoyed,
There's a lot of pressure in that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So I'm like, well, maybe if I squat more, then I won't be as attached to the one day, but but then I have to sleep even better because I'm now squatting more, or whatever.
Yeah.
This episode of the ZAO Strength podcast is brought to you by the coaches at ZAO Strength. If you enjoy this episode and would like to support us, consider following ZAO Strength on Instagram and sharing this podcast with your friends. Have you ever wondered if there was a better way to solve training problems, through your plateaus, improve your technique, and reach your powerlifting goals? With self-determined coaching, you will gain access to over 30 custom, fully modular training programs designed to help you gain strength, build muscle, and hit PRs at your next powerlifting meet. If you love to tinker with your training, have ownership over each part of the training, but would like some assistance here and there through guided form checks and self-coaching calls, then self-determined coaching is available now at zaostrength.com. And without further ado, let's get back into the episode.
Okay, we had a coffee break, actually. I mean, orange break. We ate some oranges.
Yep.
And one of the things that I was kind of curious about and almost envious of was just, I mean, it's funny. I literally have a gym in my house. So it's not really about that Tyson's closer to the gym. But Tyson, you mentioned at the beginning, you do have a lot more relatedness to the people at the gym. There's like a bit more excitement being there. You have a lot of friends there. When I go to St. Paul, I mean, not to hate on anyone at St. Paul, but I'm not like, oh, yo, it's all my friends.
I don't know anybody at St. Paul.
Yeah.
I went there, I was like, I know none of you. This is so weird.
Yeah, like all the people that I feel like, not all of them, but I only really know people that you know. I don't know anyone at the gym at Los that you don't know, at least not now. And I could be more intentional about it for sure. But at the same time, like for some reason over the last few years, I haven't really thought about the gym as a place for like social engagements, because I just feel like I don't actually have time to talk to anybody other than like Abby. But it's probably not completely true. I really want to go and train. I don't really want to talk to anybody, especially with all the things we talked about before, being loud and stuff. I just want to have a good time. So that's also why I really like training here. But I don't get out if I train here all the time. And the more I think about it, it's like, why don't I just like give myself 30, 40 minutes every day to just decide if like maybe I want to do something today. I've tried this in the past where I just show up and I do like, oh, I'm going to do one exercise or something. And then I'm like, well, but then it doesn't actually take me 40 minutes. It's like always like 2 hours, like no matter what. It's like if I show up to the gym, I don't get the satisfaction out of it unless I've been there for like an hour and a half at least.
Yeah, I understand that.
Even if this section of my house is the gym, like, I don't know. Sometimes I'm like, wouldn't this have been better if I had 3 exercises today and I just got them done and now I can rest? But yeah, I'm just having a tough time knowing what I would want to do given this information of what you do.
Sure.
With barbells, basically, and a pull-up bar.
Yeah.
And I have cables, which I've been really liking the cables. Not cables, sorry, the bands. Been great. I've been really liking the bands.
Yeah.
However, getting to the gym could be nice. My biggest thing for those who don't know is I really like making content. That's why we're doing this video. So for me, the biggest, like, not that Tyson doesn't have any other things he could worries about when training, but for me, the biggest thing I worry about is like, one, I'm always thinking about content I can make. So it does make it a little bit difficult to be fully present, because it is part of the job to like film B-roll and film these other things. And maybe I'm thinking about what tutorials should I make? I'm not always as present as I wish I was. So there's that kind of battle anytime I'm in the gym. It's like, am I here to work, or am I here to play, or am I here to have fun, or am I here to socialize, or am I here to perform? So that's always kind of going on in my head. And I think the answer that's probably clear is like, if training outcomes are the thing I care about, I need to think about the process more than I need to think about content. And just make sure I dedicate, like, here's when I'm making content, here's when I'm not. But sometimes I wake up and I'm like, man, I want to make a video that I filmed from my training the other day. And then like that takes up way more time than I thought. And now I've got consultations to do or programs to write. And now it's late and I don't have any time to, I could train, but it's like 8 o'clock and I don't know how well I'm going to sleep if there's just like that lack of consistency. But what you mentioned earlier is that you consistently kind of train from like 10 to 12. And, at least whenever Abby and I train, that's around when we train too. But it does take me a bit to get up open my eyes. Like,
yeah.
Again, I think the medication kind of impact that a little bit too, but yeah, I think that would be cool to do something at 10 to 12 or whatever every single day, whether it's walking or lifting, and just there's no rest days, basically.
Like life will provide them for you. Like there'll be a day where it's just inconvenient to train. Like, cool. Or your body's just like, bro.
That's a good point. Because like I had a 2-week rest day.
Yes, you did. Life provided the opportunity.
Yeah. Oh, you're done now. Yeah, you decided. We've decided for you. You're gonna get COVID, and if your body recovers, you can train again. you punk. That's a good point too. It's like I have so much time to train, yet I have these like artificial rest days, like because society told me we need rest days. No, I was kidding. But like all the programs, I write, I have rest days for my athletes. So why wouldn't I have rest days myself? And it's like, if you think about all the muscles you can train, if you do separate them throughout the week, it'd be pretty difficult to get that all in on one day. Just one day you're doing this. You have to train every day pretty much.
Yeah.
But as a result, you have kind of developed more of an identity with lifting every day because it's part of what you do.
Yes.
The downside is like effort in at each day, and again knowing how much you can sustain for however long you train. But fuck, man, it kind of gets me excited. Like, could I just how many exercises do you do a day?
Right now it's fairly high, but it's I would say at least 3 up to 9.
Okay.
But the muscles tend to get smaller. Like I hit smaller muscles as I get deeper into the session. Like by the end of the session, it's probably going to be like calves and lateral deltoids. But like I feel like my mentality is like a priority muscle group. So for me, like lateral deltoids, I had like the same level of strength and size in them for like 10 years. And like, okay, I really want to grow in this area. It's a high priority. I would get a lot out of, it'd be very fulfilling for me to improve them. So I started training them almost every session. And so because I wouldn't be fully recovered for the next session or the next, like that did impact how much I did on a given day. I kind of had a mentality of like, do enough that I can still train them tomorrow, but like at least achieve like a top end set. Like I generally would look for progress, like progressive overload in terms of like, can I hit like a set of 10 with the 20-pound dumbbells? Can I do 11? Can I do 12? And it wouldn't always be there. Like on some days I'm like, because of my overhead press, some other variable in what I was doing would impact my performance on that day. But I still like have this mentality of like almost training it every day and like seeing if I can hit PBs or personal bests in that context. And then some days I'm like, okay, clearly I need rest. Or even just going through the motions would be like recovery. Like even though I wouldn't really push the lateral deltoid movement, I would do enough that it like felt.
So you've been training your lateral delts every day?
More or less.
Wow.
Like I would say I do a cable or a dumbbell lateral deltoid raise almost every session.
That's, I mean, you can see the growth.
Yeah, it's
right. Like that's not. It's surprising though that you've been able to recover in that area. Like, I mean, you said how many hard sets are you doing a day for the lateral deltoids?
It depends on how they feel. I plan for like 1, and I would say I with all the movements I'm doing, like I do 3 to 7 warm-up sets. So even with the cable lateral deltoid, I might go like, and there's like 1.5 increments. So I could go like 12 and then 14 and then 15.5. And then like I make jumps and I do enough reps that I will be more prepared for the next set than not doing it or being cold. So like even but I still take the approach of like rather than just like going to the weight that I did last time with my lateral deltoid, I try to like give it a chance to ramp up and achieve a top performance. And I can usually tell by like the second to last warm up set if I'm gonna like hit a PB with lateral raises, but it's continually growing. But
yeah, that's so cool. I'm like just trying to visualize it. Could I do that? Like, is that something that I could do? And what would be needed to do that? Like, and then, I mean, so right now I'm going to the gym to Lowe's. I'm going to Lowe's on Thursdays or Saturday or Sunday. I'm training here on Tuesdays, but I could train here Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, train at Lowe's Thursday, train here Friday, train at Lowe's Saturday, train at Lowe's Sunday, maybe, right? Just intentionally. And then that way, when I show up here, like if I think about I'm training every day, maybe it puts less of an emphasis on like what I do, but just being here and doing something and knowing that as long as I'm not doing 10 hard sets or like 8 hard sets, even like the fact that you have so much intention with the warm-ups, like I could probably do something like that. I just have to decide like this is for sure happening. And then we go into self-determination. Like what could I do to make it more relatable? Well, you're doing it. So maybe we talk more about like how training is feeling and what we did. That would be kind of cool. I mean, if I thought about it, I could do it more. The thing about social media is that it's also technically one way you can increase relatability.
Yeah.
But it is a bit harder because then you start attaching your relatedness to like this fleeting kind of thing that is social media, and like whether or not anyone relates to you isn't really a byproduct of like what you've done. It's just like how the algorithm decides to make you related to other people.
Yep.
So I don't want to depend on that, but it is one of the reasons why I like making content. Because I'm like, I haven't related to anybody today. Like, I want to make this content so people connect with me.
Absolutely.
So sad. 2023, guys. Cyberpunk is predicting. Blade Runner is happening right now. It's Blade Runner season. It's actually one of my favorite like Hans Zimmer playlists to listen to.
It's so good.
Just all the time. It's like, okay. And I get kind of sad or like kind of like down. So I'm like, I'm like, it is real. We are living in a dystopia, you know? And I'm in this gym and I'm ignoring all these things outside just like they do in the movie. Well, I don't know if they work out, but anyway, it's a good playlist. If you don't get that little tune, then isn't that like Mesa or like, is it 2049?
Yeah, I think it's 2049.
Yeah. So listen to that song if you need to zone in. So anyway, I don't know. I'm just like thinking like, well, how could I set up my training and so I could go to the gym every day? Because I think that cardio is something I could do as part of that. I just, fuck, man, there's something about cardio doing it by yourself at home. It's just like, maybe like, what if I could get cardio in through another means, like of other than just walking? Because as much as that's like the simplest thing, I wonder if there's like a way I could use what I got here to do like cardio, you know, like I don't know, sets of 50, but then at the same time, it's like, is that really cardio? But even doing like a session for like 45 minutes of like, kind of like that dynamic stuff that you do with the towel, like even that would be really useful, I think.
Yeah.
Because then it's kind of like meditative. If you did this earlier this morning with that, kind of like that stretch for your shoulder.
Yep.
Like, yeah, I don't know. I feel like I could, if I implemented that, then maybe I'm not going from sitting down all day to, guys, this is just me now trying to figure out how to train. So thanks for listening. It's about me now, guys. Hopefully you're thinking about this too. But yeah, I do wonder if that might be a strategy. It's just always like when I think about like new things, I'm like, if you guys learn more about like motivational interviewing, for example, if you haven't learned about self-determination, motivational interviewing is kind of like another way to think about behavioral change. It's like, what questions you have to ask yourself that, or really you ask somebody else when you're interviewing them. But like Tyson's role here would be to ask me more questions about what would have to happen to elicit change. So I guess me monologuing, what do you think I need to figure out? Like, what are your thoughts about like, if I want to train 7 days a week and kind of do what you're doing kind of, but in my way, what do you think I've got to figure out?
Yeah.
Live.
Yeah.
Live coaching.
What movements or muscle groups would you be excited about seeing their capacity vastly improved upon. Like, so for me, it was pull-ups, and like, not that I did pull-ups every day, but I was like always kind of like, when do I was wanting to train it as soon as it was ready again.
Mm-hmm,
So
mm-hmm.
like, it might not be pull-ups for you. Like, it could be like biceps. Like it could be a muscle group that you like. I want it to look bigger
Yeah.
when I go to the meet.
Mm-hmm.
Like something that you could plan to train most of the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, the first few thoughts were like I got really excited about doing Bayesian curls.
Mm-hmm.
So like hammer curl, like any type of curl,
Mm-hmm.
but specifically ones that like really create a good contraction and aren't too dependent on like technique, I guess.
Yeah.
Just like you work hard and it works. It does a thing.
Bayesian curl, is that the one where it's like from behind?
Yeah, behind. Yeah. So you kind of like stretch it. It's elongated.
Yeah, I like those. I like those a lot.
And then I've been really enjoying overhead work as well. Like I get excited. I'm also kind of like thinking like, when do I get to do a Z press again?
Cool.
I mean, obviously I want to bench more, but
Mm-hmm.
but like I don't know. I haven't like I got this really awesome incline bench machine or bench pad, and it's excellent. But I don't love the feeling right now of like incline benching, but I really like the feeling of overhead work.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the other thought that comes to mind. And then pull-ups are exciting as well. I don't get as excited to them, but I do look forward to like doing a weighted pull-up.
Yeah.
What else would I like enjoy? I mean, obviously I would love it if my quads grew. Like
Yeah.
they're not small, but they're the one movement where I feel like I'm always looking for a different exercise to make them work, because like right now with the squat, I think the squats make my quads feel the most engaged. Like
Yep.
I got excited to do the leg press at Los, and it's not as good as a feeling as I thought it was going to be, because I think there's one leg press that I like, and it's the Cybex leg press. It's like the one that like a squat. It actually feels like a squat.
Mm-hmm.
The other ones make me feel like less symmetrical because they're like purely symmetrical movements. Like I'm always thinking like, is my foot too close to the center? Is it not far away? The angle on my left feels weird. My right feels normal. Like the competition squat, honestly, is the only squat right now that I'm doing where I'm like, hey, my quads felt good there. Right. Split squats, obviously they work it, and I probably could do more of them. Again, I don't get excited about them. They're always like the movement that I'm like, I don't know. Basically, all my lower body movements I'm kind of slightly nervous about, in a sense. Like I'm not thinking about pain when I think about bicep curls, but I'm thinking, would more squatting bother my hip? Because obviously the 3 days I did bother my hip.
Right.
But like I would love to kind of just curl my squat. The hamstrings actually would be interesting, because the hamstrings I don't feel too much like, oh, that's scary. Yeah. Like I don't have any of that feeling with hamstrings. So that'd be kind of a nice muscle to focus on. And then honestly, like just like chest and shoulders, and then like chest, shoulders, and lats and biceps. Basically, I want to be a bro again.
Absolutely. That I've fully leaned into that. And that's a part of where my enjoyment has come from.
Like it would be cool to have side delts. I just have never envisioned myself to have like boulder shoulders.
I understand that. Absolutely.
You know, so,
I didn't either.
So maybe I just need to like see what happens. Because I think one of the reasons why I moved away from bodybuilding is like it felt like the progress was always so slow. But now that I don't do any bodybuilding, I'm like, I don't even know, am I even getting bigger? Like, you know, I'm not thinking about it at all.
Yeah.
And now since I'm not doing movement, I'm like just getting heavier, and I'm like, is this muscle? How much is it? You know what I mean? So
yeah.
Guys, this is why it's hard to coach me, because I don't know what I want. And at the same time, I kind of do. I just have to be honest that the biggest fear is more like my hips, you know, like as of recently, before like 6 months, I didn't give a shit. Like there's nothing could hurt me. Now, like deadlifts, sumo deadlifts aren't giving me the things I want.
Yeah.
And squatting does feel good. I just got the Savaleos. So I was thinking, you know, maybe if I had Savaleos, I could do like front squats. Like front squats are feeling really good. But then my knees started bothering me. So it's just that stress management is the big thing over all of this.
Absolutely.
But I'm a lot less concerned about stress management with like my biceps, my lats. Yeah. I am about my chest, because my pec tendons get sore really fast.
Right.
Tender. But other than that, yeah. Hamstrings, shoulders, biceps, lats. Chest, those are the ones. So those are the ones I don't care about stress management. I mean, I do, but I'm not like as sensitive.
Right.
Chest and quads, I will want to grow, but it's just because I know they'd help with my main lifts.
Yep.
But I'm nervous. I got to make sure the movement isn't irritating my hip.
Yep.
Calves, I don't care about, but somehow I could get into it.
Yeah.
And then generally speaking, I want to get leaner.
Yep.
So I want to improve my cardio. I want to have my heart doing more stuff more often.
Yep. It's a lot of good stuff to work with. That's great.
All right, go.
Yeah. Because so then it's just like, a couple of movements that hit a lot of those. And then you plan to just cycle through them on as soon as they're ready to go in the queue, do them again. And if you didn't have the competition coming up, it would be a lot easier, I think, because then in my mind, it's like squat once every other week, deadlift once every other week, increase as it feels good to.
And then on the alternative weeks, just train kind of the muscles.
Yeah, it'd be like I'd go ham on the Sorbex leg press, like drive.
Which I think they only have at fucking your gym, Franklin.
Yeah. So it's like
gotta go to Franklin.
Train at Franklin once a week.
Guys, we're doxing ourselves. Like I'm training at Franklin on Thursdays at 7 p.m.
But yeah, just like I think I started saying this when we were over and taking our break, but like with the deadlifts, I view them as like a big meal, like a feast. Like my deadlift muscles have been like starving for weeks and I've been on the hunt. It's such a huge stimulus for all of those muscles. Yeah. And it because it has so much space to then I don't know, grow into, it's been such an interesting wave of momentum. Because I remember the first time I did sets of 12 sumo deadlifts at 5-6 RPE, it was 335. I remember 315-ish was I feel like I have 5 in the tank.
Mm-hmm.
But it was just the novelty of going into that rep range that I never really touched before. Because I basically do almost a stiff leg sumo deadlift with an RDL kind of. It's a controlled eccentric, I don't know, leg pressy movement. But it was such a potent stimulus that I went up 30 pounds and then I went up 30 pounds. And it's just I'm riding this wave of now I did 555 for 7. Because I didn't have the pressure of the competition, I didn't do sumo deadlifts until my hips, my hamstrings, everything felt like they could go again.
Mm-hmm.
I think leaving 4 or 5 in the tank helped me be ready in about a week. But so upper body wise, I'm do an overhead press almost every day. Definitely Z press, maybe do a single arm, I don't know. There's a lot of ways you can press, but press as often as the pressing muscles are ready to go again.
Yeah.
Pull-ups and C rows will grow your back. There's more you could do, but honestly, it's that's great.
I just think if I showed up to the gym, even just if it's here, I could probably just think about kind of do a meditation for 10 minutes, think about what my body's feeling, and then leverage the constraints I have here and just decide something and just push it somewhat hard, but not have a goal, a weight in mind.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I almost want to just do that because the thing is I'm not going to have the momentum I want anyway.
Mm-hmm.
I just,
right.
You know what I mean?
Yes. Yes.
I'm not going to be able to just magnify my training because the meet's coming up anyway. Yeah. So as long as I'm squatting at least once a week and deadlifting once a week or once every other, for example, before this all happened, I was doing conventional. I'm a sumo puller. I was doing conventional as a way to stimulate, the hinge without pulling sumo, and then I was doing glass deadlifts as a way to still deadlift without magnifying the stress on my hip, which pretty much within 2 or 3 weeks was cool. I don't even feel my hip anymore. I can squat normally. Cool. The big thing is on the rack. If my hip's bothering me, it's on that first step, I'm oof, then I'm fine. But it's I don't want to feel that.
Right. No.
At all.
No.
So anyway, guys, I think we've kind of came to an idea of what I want to do.
That's great.
What other questions? I guess I'm using me as an example because I want you guys to think about this for yourself. If you're thinking, oh, how could I train intuitively? Because ultimately that's what I'm trying to do. Yeah. And what I mean by that is really being present with what your sensations are to try to develop a strategy on the day or in the 10 minutes, that makes sense for you.
Mm-hmm.
Because obviously as a coach, or both of us, our job is to try to build a plan for someone that they can follow, they can build these habits around. And, I think that's also, there's obviously time and place for that. And maybe for most people, that is what you want to do for a long time. But eventually, I find with athletes I've worked with a while, there's just so many things going on. Like, I am no longer capable of making these decisions for people. They have to kind of do it themselves, and hopefully the tools I've provided for them are sufficient to help them make those correct decisions in the moment based on what they kind of are interested in. I have 2 lifters kind of trying to start that this week. Hopefully we get this out by the end of the month, be a PR for podcasting. But what other question do you think I need to answer? You've asked me what I'm interested in growing. What else? You said try to overhead press somewhat overhead press variation every day, or just shoulder.
Yeah,
I could do the side variations on the off days or whatever.
Yeah, I would like alternate them, and then like they'll give you a clear signal of like, we need rest today, and rest.
Yeah, right. And I really like the rowing variations, the SIBO rows, the pulls.
Yep.
I've been loving that single arm cable row. So I don't have that here, but I can easily turn a cable into a single arm row. Just stretch it out enough. So yeah. Anyway, what are the other things that you think of? What's the next phase in that process for you?
Sure. So yeah, you have a list of muscle groups or movements associated with the muscle groups that would be gratifying to increase. You can plan to generally train them most days, or some variation or adjacent variation of them. I don't know. That's like the place to start, because then it's just like a matter of like in the actual training session, as you're warming up your body, checking in with it. What is it capable of today? And then doing the warm-up sets, trying to make calculated jumps. Like I do enough reps that you practice the movement, but not so many that you're taking away from your ability to do a top end set. I like 3 to 5, but it can be more if it feels like, especially if something feels like kind of rusty, I'll do more.
Yeah.
But like giving yourself enough jumps to truly achieve like a top performance and ramp up. And then once you've done that top performance, checking with your body of like, is this enough? And I also like, if I'm enjoying a movement, like for me, my upper chest has been like my highest priority muscle group other than like lateral deltoids. So like, if there's a little bit more to give, I'll do more. Like I'll work up to I recently hit a PB on incline dumbbell bench of like 100 for 8. And then like I did 95 for whatever I could. And then I did 90 for whatever I could. And then I did 85 for whatever I could. But I was willing to be done at 100. But I was just like, I kept checking in of like, could I do more? I think so. And so I did more. And then like I didn't plan it, but I did incline dumbbell bench like 2 sessions in a row, which I wouldn't necessarily like, that's not optimal, but it's just like they felt recovered enough to go again. And I really want these muscles to grow. So I just did it again.
That's tight. I think we have somewhat of a process to go through. It's kind of, again, the big thought that I had before this was like, you need to be developing strategies that allow you, habits, I guess, rituals, routines that are supplementary to, like, because intuition is only valuable if you have experience. Otherwise, you don't. What are you making? What's your intuition based off of? Like, what are you fucking? I'm just showing up at the gym. My thoughts are 20 sets of squats. Like, where did that come from?
And I've been lifting now for longer than I haven't been. Like, I've been lifting for 15 years. I started at 14.
Yeah, I've been benching since I was 12, but you wouldn't know it because I can bench just up and down. I get hurt all the time. That's another thing. It's like, I think a lot of that is probably because I'm not listening to the body as much as I should. I'm listening to the program and didn't like, the program said a double out of 9. Maybe I should change that for the next block. But it's like, what if I just changed it in that day? Is it really going to make a difference? Like, is it really going to alter anything if I do less today because my body isn't there for it? But we always, I think, are fighting these like kind of toxic thoughts that have been developed over the last however long we've been training about like what is needed, what you should be doing versus what you are capable of doing. And thinking that any moment in training is more important than the cumulative moments of training. I'm sure that you can relate if you're listening to this. I know Tyson can relate. I can relate. It fucking happened on Sunday. I'm like, fuck, I can't hit my top set on sumo deadlifts. Like, this is how am I ever gonna hit a PR? You know, it's like, well, you aren't gonna do it today because you're in pain. Why would you like just do something else? There's look, options are endless, bro.
Yeah.
But in the moment you're thinking, well, I want to do sumo deadlifts, so why I want to do more then? But the body's like, no, and you're like, if I overcome it, maybe that'll fix it. Like if I just think harder, you know, it didn't work. I thought less, and that felt better, and calming down felt better, and that just kind of led me to this thought, like, fuck, I think we can. If you're interested in these things that we've been talking about today, I think Tyson and I might have to just do a podcast every week for a while, just like we're doing training every day, because I want to develop this as far as we can. Are there any other thoughts that you have? Because I don't know. Yeah, are there any thoughts you've had on this idea and what you might encourage someone who wants to do intuitive training, like, you know, general, before you start, here's what you need to know. Go.
There's a lot of value in like ritual, like practicing, like it's like the free throw every time, of like just this process that I can get into of like putting on music that I am feeling that day, getting on a cardio machine, raising my body temperature, checking in with my body. Like there's a flow that develops. Like I feel like my body's able to achieve things that I didn't necessarily think I could going into that session, because I was able to engage in this process of ramping up. And like and when you do that, that stimulus that comes from that session where you did a lot, like is a really rich stimulus. Like it's really a strong signal for your body to put on muscle or increase its connection to the muscle to get stronger. Like so like if the more you can dial in your individual that day training session, the enjoyment of that process, is it all adds up. It's so cumulative. And it could be like, you know, in the long term too, of like, you know, I don't know, being more familiar with the faces of the gym, feeling comfortable in the environment, but like, yeah, it all comes together. So I guess practice the establishing some kind of form of like ritual to it.
Yeah, because there's accumulation that matters. I had a protein smoothie today, so now I'm going to have muscle. It's like, well, did you have it every day? You know, like, did you eat enough protein every day? Did you train? Maybe you don't have to train every day, but did you train often enough to continuously allow and encourage the body to make appropriate adaptations? I want to add that there's a lot of technical stuff that is kind of baked into all of these decisions.
Yeah, absolutely.
Tyson and I spend hours of our lives learning about new training concepts. I mean, both of us have nerded out on YouTube videos and like dug into PubMed and fucking are up to date on like the best researchers in the field. Like we know we might not give enough credit to what we know when we're making these decisions, but I think Tyson and I both have a baseline level of knowledge that really helps to make these decisions. So obviously if you're not there, I wouldn't maybe encourage personally an intuitive approach, because you still can obviously get a lot out of like a kind of a pre-planned assessment based on what you've done in the past, and, you know, just pull the stress. I still think the minimum effective volume approach is useful with planned training. I think that should be a starting point for everyone. If it's not planned, it's still a good starting point, but I think it is a little harder to know what is even the minimum effective if you're doing it every day. But then it does bring it to the session level anyway versus the weekly level, because when I write a program, I'm thinking about the weekly stress, not the daily stress. So the daily stress matters, because if the daily stress on day one is too high, then on day 4 it's going to be way too high. Sorry, if they're all the same every day, and the stress on day 1 is too high, it's going to be too high on day 2, 3, and 4. So now it's 4 times what it's supposed to be because we tried to get too much in. So for anyone that has questions for us, obviously message Tyson on Instagram at tyson.zaostrength. Email him at tyson@zaostrength.com. You can email me at jim@zaostrength.com. Any of our coaches, Seba, safe. That's it, I guess. Me, Seba, you, safe. Yeah, send us a message. Follow us on Instagram at ZAO Strength. Our next podcast, I think if we can get this in until maybe we try for one podcast a week. Just us, just the two coaches for now. We'll talk about interviewing other people later. But I'm not curious about that right now. I'm curious about what's in this guy's brain. Because look at how big he's kidding on the daily. You know, like Louis Marco? Remember Louis Marco? The daily basis, bro. Remember that guy?
No.
He'd like drink a smoothie and he'd be like, oh yeah, I'm making gains on a daily basis, bro. We train biceps on a daily. He just said daily basis like all the time.
That's funny.
I don't even know where he's from, like Romania or something. And I don't really know if he's relevant anymore, but he was a guy I watched a lot when I was younger. So that's Tyson. Tyson's
daily
got
basis.
Tyson's like Louis Marco, but like has, you know, sustained his daily basis. It's like real daily basis
Sustainable
training.
daily basis.
Sustainably, yeah, that's our next program. Sustainable daily training by Tyson Eckel. That's his book. It's coming out February 2024. Maybe earlier. I don't know. We've got to figure out what's sustainable on a daily basis.
100 words a day.
What was that? Oh man, there's this podcast I was listening to, and they're making a lot of these nuts jokes, and I just thought that might be a fun way to end. But I don't remember them. So, on that note, see you later. Peace.